What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are listening to Podcasting Business School, the show where I teach podcasters how to love their podcast like a hobby and build it like a business. And today we got a little podcast audit session going with my friend Verity from the Confident CEO podcast. Verity, how's it going today?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, I'm very excited too, and I've got a soft spot in my heart for like business-based podcasts. So I'm always excited. I'm like, ooh, another business-based podcast. All right, let's rock. So let's say that you and I are sitting down having a conversation like this 6 months from today. Things are going exceedingly well. You've made a few tweaks and things are really starting to pick up momentum. Paint that picture for me.
Oh my gosh, that is an amazing picture. To me, where I would love to be is in the main business podcast charts in the UK for the podcast. At the moment, we tend to hit the entrepreneurship kind of subsection of the business podcast charts for the UK, but my aim for this podcast is to get it in the main business chartings for the UK and maybe beyond, who knows?
Cool. Okay. And what kind of charts are you looking at? Is like Apple, Spotify, Chartable? Where are you
Apple
looking at?
Podcasts. Apple
Okay.
Podcasts is where I tend to sit the most. Yeah.
Cool. And that's where we usually recommend people, if you're going to look at charts, look at Apple, look at Spotify. A lot of people get fired up about Chartable or Good Pods, and that's awesome. But you have to understand that if your show isn't listed on Chartable and if it's not listed on Good Pods, then you cannot be ranked. So there are lots and lots of people that aren't ranked, and it's just kind of weird. And you have to go in and manually list those. So just kind of an FYI for those. And it's not, I want you to celebrate every win. If you get ranked anywhere, celebrate it. Sometimes people are like, I'm a top 10 podcast. I'm like, where? And like on Chartable. I'm like, well, there's an asterisk to that. So anyway, so if we're looking to rank on Apple in the main category, I think that's an awesome goal. Now, what do you feel like is the number one thing holding you back from getting there right now?
Oh, I think that's a really good question. I'm not entirely sure. I wonder if some of it is probably around the self-promotion. The podcast isn't 100% aligned with my business. So I promote it on my Instagram and my LinkedIn, but because it isn't 100% aligned, I don't want it kind of clogging up my feed too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, okay, question about that then. With your show, like what would you say is the purpose of your show? Are you still trying to make connections that could lead to business? Is there any way that we could, are you getting clients from your show that do hire you? What's that picture look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So the podcast, the Confident CEO podcast, is very much a passion project of mine. So I'm going to actually be having another podcast, which is going to funnel in directly into my business and act as a lead magnet to the business. The Confident CEO, though, is very much a passion project of just, I want to bring more conversation to the business topics that I don't feel are being talked about enough, particularly in the female entrepreneurship space. So it doesn't really act as a funnel for my current business. I talk about things every so often in certain episodes. I'll be like, this is what's going on, but it's not a massive lead funnel for me at the moment. But then it was never really set up with that design in mind, if that makes sense.
Okay. So let's just look at some growth ideas then, like just some like low-hanging fruit. Let's check this checklist and make sure that we're covering all of the basics. Now, you said your ideal listener would be a female entrepreneur. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. My main target group, female entrepreneurs in their 20s, 30s, 40s, probably within the first couple of years of their business. And that's who I attract as well. So that's good.
Okay. And the full title of your show is the Confident CEO podcast. There's nothing in addition to that. Okay. So that may be something that we could look at, is do a title line extension with your ideal listener keywords. Like female entrepreneur is that's a great keyword to have in a podcast title. So where like when we do a title extension, it's not necessarily like you change the name of the show. Every time it's same intro, it's welcome to the Confident CEO podcast. But on the title line, if we put the Confident CEO podcast, tips for female entrepreneurs, all of a sudden we're showing up when people are searching entrepreneurship, female entrepreneurship, whatever. And then, so what if it was me, what I would personally do, I would add something like that to the title. And then on the art, I would add that verbiage in there, and really, the female entrepreneur, I would have that in a little bit of a different color that pops on your art, so that when they're searching female entrepreneur, entrepreneurship tips for females or whatever, your show is going to pull up, and then that's actually highlighted in the art as well, so that they recognize, oh, this is for me. Is that making sense?
It makes perfect sense. I love that. I think it's brilliant.
It's simple.
I'm going to go do that later.
Well, it's something you can do in like 5 minutes, where it's just like, all right, add this extension, update it in Libsyn or Buzzsprout or wherever you host, and then update the art. It's all just, the art's going to, usually update within 12 to 24 hours. The name updates immediately. And all of a sudden, as you release new content, that SEO work is just happening organically and easily. So that's something that I think, and think about, is it female entrepreneurship? Are there any other keywords like stay-at-home moms is another good one, solopreneurs, like all those, whatever those herbs and spices fit, we want to make sure that we try to put those in that title line. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. And I love that.
Outstanding. Okay. We're off and rolling. So that's kind of just organic reach stuff that you said it once. It helps you as you go along. What are we doing as far as a new episode goes live? How are we marketing that episode, and when are we marketing that episode?
Yeah, absolutely. So within an hour of it going live, it gets an email blast goes out to my email list. So they all get that pretty much straight off. The episode also gets shared within the first 24 hours on my LinkedIn and also on my Instagram. And then after that one post, I continue to promote it on my Instagram stories.
Okay, cool. So I would challenge you to use my 72-hour marketing window rule, where, so it sounds like we've got 2, maybe 3 different marketing assets: an email, a post, and then Instagram stories, throughout the rest of the week. So I want to challenge you to put out 5 unique marketing assets within 72 hours of release. What day do you release on?
Wednesday.
Perfect. So we're looking at Wednesday. What I like to see is Wednesday AM, PM, Thursday AM, PM, maybe Friday AM. Or you could do like Tuesday or Wednesday, 3 in one day. But 72 hours, 5 unique assets. So your newsletter, boom, that's one. Definitely, that's a great one. That's one of mine. A carousel post. Are you doing any live streaming on Instagram at all?
No, I'm terrible at Instagram live streaming. I need to do more of it.
Something to consider. And let me tell you something cool you could do. Since you're doing a guest base, are you having guests on the show, like, different?
Yeah, it's a mix of solo and guest episodes.
Okay. Yeah. So you could have like the CEO roundtable weekly episode, where I'm using this technique right now on my Tuesday night lives to kind of spice it up, right? I just call it Around the Pod. And I've got 3 other podcasters that come on and go live with me, all on screen at the same time. So you could have like a CEO roundtable with 3 of your previous guests all live with you, all at the same time. And then as you introduce them, you name drop the episode that they were on, of course, to kind of promote your show. And ideally, you want the one that's the most recent episode to be on there live with you as soon as possible to kind of promote that episode. But it's really easy. I do this in a 30-minute format. It's kind of like a talk show. So it's kind of a podcast flow. I mean, it feels very much like a podcast when I do it. It's not just me staring at the phone going, so that's where it kind of gets weird sometimes. But you have specific questions that you ask, and kind of like, very simple questions. Like, if you go back when you first started your company, what advice would you give yourself? Each person goes around and answers. Then it's like, what is one tip or one resource that you think all new business owners should be diving into? A book, a podcast, whatever. And then kind of go around. And at the end, it's like, all right, and how can people follow you on social media, and give them a chance to kind of promote themselves a little bit? But the cool thing about it when you do this is that when you are live, for a certain amount of time, Instagram will do push notifications to your audience. But when you have all these other people live with you, the notifications go out to all their directions as well. So it's doing push notifications in 4 different directions, or 3 or 2, however many people you have on the screen, which is very helpful for picking up new followers and new people getting in front of your content. So I would consider it, maybe practice it a little bit. You could easily join one of my Around the Pod episodes. I do them on Tuesdays. Might be kind of late for you though. Well, I'll try to calculate the math. I know you are several time zones ahead of me. So
it's
we'll
fine.
maybe
I'll be
figure
there with
that
my
out.
cocoa at 11 p.m.
Yeah. So we can talk about that, but that way you can practice and see what it's all about. I think you'll find like, wow, this is actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. So that's something to consider. But I would just look at some unique assets, whether it's carousel posts, going live, Instagram reels, videos. And just for me, what's working really well right now on reels is I just turn my phone and I just stick it in my face and I just rattle off like 3 tips or something like that. I was doing them where I was driving around and people started yelling at me about like distracted driving. I totally get that. But I was usually like in a parking lot or something. I wasn't actually driving, but there were a couple of them where I was like pulling into the parking lot and I'm getting and I understand that was not a smart thing to do. But those were getting a lot of reach. So I'm kind of bummed out. I'm like, the car videos were really doing well. So I'll have to make sure at the beginning, like, listen, I'm parked in a car, not moving. And then drop some tips, but just simple stuff, just face the camera. Here are the top 3 takeaways from this week's episode. Bing, bing, bing. And then you've got a 60-second reel, or maybe take a sub sliver of something you learned from the guest and give your thoughts on it. Like, this guest talked about how important building an email list was to their company. Here are 3 email tips that I'm going to give you that have worked for me. So something like that, real quick, real easy, but it encourages people. If you like this, go get some more tips on this episode I just released. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. I really like those tips.
All right. So I like the marketing and just stirring it up. And I like the fact that you've kind of honed in on Instagram as where you're getting some engagement and you're kind of focusing on that. I don't like to encourage podcasters to be all over the place, because I'm like, experiment, fish in some different ponds, figure out where you get the most bites engagement wise, and really double down, triple down, quadruple down on that, because we've only got 24 hours in the day. And I want all my pod pals to like have good relationships and have like me time and have like, see their children and things like that, instead of I've got to do another TikTok video or post on Pinterest or something like that. Okay. So other growth, lanes that we can explore. One is obviously guesting on other people's podcasts. OPP, me, other people's podcasts. How often are we doing that?
That is a really good question. Last year, I was really on it, and we did a lot don't ask me how many a lot is, because I lost count after a while. And 2023 rolled around, and it's now the 25th of April, and I've done 2.
Okay.
So I was sitting down just yesterday and I was like, Q2 goal, we need to get on some more podcasts. We need to be doing that. I don't really know where this year's gone.
Okay. So, I think as podcasters, we should all have a goal per month of how many other shows that we want to be on, and shows that like are great fits where we can obviously speak to our unique ability and add value. But also where they have an audience that could potentially kind of be scooped up into our world as well. And we could continue to add value. So not just any old podcast, but like really ideal fit ones. And I think a good starting goal for any podcaster is 1 a month. Like, let's get on 12 podcasts this year. And that's, if they're right fit, that's a great start. Some people it's 2 a month. What we have to watch is we kind of cross that threshold of like, now I'm just guessing on other people's shows a lot. I'm having a hard time keeping up with my own content, or I'm not doing as many like sales calls or like things that, create opportunities for me to pay my own bills, sort of a situation. So we have to find that sweet spot of, I've got 2 hours a month, 3 hours a month where I can go on someone else's show. That time is allotted for that. It doesn't hurt my business at all. I'm still able to keep up with my own content. So whatever that is for you, Verity, or anybody listening in, I think it is good just to have that target, that average per month or per year. And then you're like, all right, I got to get on 15 shows this year. It's April. I've only been on 2. So let's ratchet that up and see what we could do. And I'm sure there may be somebody that's listening in. We got lots and lots of people that listen in. So like, if you're going to pitch yourself to be a guest on somebody's show, like what are one or two core topics that you could really crush on someone else's show? Because someone listening, they may want to book you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'd love that. That'd be amazing. But I think the biggest things that I love to talk about is, funnily enough, podcasting. Female entrepreneurs, how beneficial a podcast can be for female entrepreneurs, particularly people in the coaching space as well. So that is my biggest thing that I like to talk about.
Outstanding. So we should definitely have some takers on that. So guesting, and just like, I love using the Apple and Spotify search engine to my advantage. So kind of think about tangential topics that you can lean into. So I'll search like online business or something like that. And I'll go and network around with online business podcasts, because that's not the exact same thing as what I talk on, but I can be a podcasting business, like how to make money via podcasting type of a special guest for those types of shows. So, email marketing podcast, soulpreneurship podcast, digital nomad podcast, like all that sort of a thing. Let's dive in there and kind of start networking around a little bit. What about paid ads? Have we dabbled in paid ads at all? So podcast player app ads, anything like that? Okay.
No, I haven't. So I'm really interested in your opinion on that, because it seems to be that something that whenever I look, people are either gun-ho for it and say, yeah, this is amazing, or they're like, no, completely stick away from it. It's the worst thing you could possibly do. So I would love to dive into that for a couple of minutes.
Yes. So I understand both of those reactions that you've heard. And the podcast player app ad that I feel very good about recommending would be like banner ads on a platform like Overcast FM. It's simple. You're advertising to podcast listeners that are listening to a show category that you selected to advertise to. It's fairly cost effective as long as people abide by Adam's rules of not overspending and certain things like that. And I'll talk about that in a second. But you can have a very good experience. And for the average podcaster, if they can go and pick up 50 new subscribers for, $5 per new subscriber or something like that, that's worth it. Worth, $250 or whatever, up to $500. Like, I like platforms where we can run a solid like $500 or less ad campaign and get some real good results, and we get real listeners. And it's not like, well, my numbers really shut up and then they dropped completely the next month. That's weird. Because I've had people do that before. Anyway, where people tend to get very frustrated is with like Facebook and Instagram ads, where they're like, okay, I'm going to run an ad campaign for my podcast episode, and now I got to figure out how to do all that with the Facebook ad system. And then we just feel like I just gave $1,000 to Mark Zuckerberg for nothing. That's where we get very frustrated. Now, I do have a solution coming up for that. I just met a couple, Matt and Megan, and they're going to be coming on the show here in a couple of weeks, where I challenge them. They're Facebook and Instagram ads experts. I go, here's the deal. You can make a bunch of money if you just figure out a simple system that you could teach podcasters on how to market their show, market their lead magnets, and market individual episodes via Instagram and Facebook. So they used me as an example. We did a whole bunch of test ads. We're going to unpack the whole thing on the show. And they built it out so that it's kind of a set it and forget it sort of a thing. You can turn the ads on and off whenever you want. So I was very happy with it. So I think we've got a solution coming with Facebook and Instagram ads. But in the meantime, Overcast FM is where I will send you specifically, Vera, to go and kind of explore a little bit. So some quick tips on that. The website is overcast.fm/ads for anybody that wants to go out there. Overcast is a podcast player app platform. And just like Spotify, just like Apple, people subscribe on there and listen. They've got millions of subscribers. They do a lot of volume. They're a top 5 podcasting player app. And you can pick any category that you want. For your show, I would look at business. I would look at education. I would look at news. You want to think about categories that not only the ones that you're in, but ones that your listeners might listen to also outside of your category. So we can pick up new listeners. And we're shooting for, the sweet spot for me is that $5 to $7 cost per acquisition. They give you that prediction on their charts. And like the business last time I looked was like 30 something dollars CPA. I'm like, whoa, way expensive. We got to wait this one out because it's demand-based pricing. So wait for that $5 to $7 CPA zone to hit. Just watch the chart. And, I just check it every single day because I always have an ad going on that platform or another platform, just because it works so effectively. And it's a banner ad. So if you pick business category, when somebody's listening to a business podcast, boom, the Confident CEO podcast banner goes right across the top. It takes your art. You get a line and a half of text that you kind of optimize as like, here's why you want to listen. Click on this banner. And they click. That's all tracked. How many people saw the banner, how many people tapped the banner, how many people actually hit the subscribe button, which to my knowledge, this is the only type of an ad that actually tracks or is able to track that. Like they hit the subscribe button. Boom. That's awesome. So that's how it works. They give you a daily update on how many subscribers you have as you do the campaign. It starts as soon as you pay for it, and it's super simple. So that's probably where I would send you to do some research. Any questions on that, Verity?
No, it seems very straightforward and definitely something that I'm going to be. Oh, well,
Yeah.
we know it's like 20 past 7 my time. I'm going to be up till like midnight just having fun with all of this.
And don't FOMO into buying an ad today. Like I would challenge you, like don't buy an ad for at least 24, 48 hours because you can start seeing it like, oh my God, I could get 70 listeners there and I could do this and that. And all of a sudden you spend $1,000. Like what I would challenge you to do is look at some categories and then message me and go, hey, I'm thinking about these categories. What kind of price should I shoot for? Because I am Mr. Podcast Nerd over here. And I keep charts on all the categories, good price, like where I've actually bought ads or my clients or my members have actually bought ads. So like the business category will go up over $2,000. I've paid $400. That's a significant difference. All right. And so we don't want to overpay on Overcast. That's very important. And my listeners know this too, as I mentioned it a few times. Anytime I mention that website, prices always go up because listeners start to go there, and the more ads that are bought, the prices go up. So there are a few other websites. I'm going to email you another one to look at that shall not be mentioned live on the air because I'm trying to keep prices down. But people in my Download Growth Club, they get all the good stuff. So if you guys want all the good stuff, either come on, do a podcast audit or join my membership because that's where they get all that information. Okay. So I feel like we look at the marketing. We did the SEO talk at the very beginning, podcast player app ads, guesting. This is how you get into that top chart, the big club on the UK podcast on Apple podcast charts. I think we get this nice little mix here and we work on this and just ingraining the system over the next 8 months or so. I think by the end of the year, you're going to have a fighting chance. If you're already in that entrepreneurship category, we can level up into the big business category. And that'll be super exciting. And you'll have to screenshot it so I can shout you out on Instagram, be like, go Verity. So is that all making sense? We feel good about this?
Definitely. So I think what I love about it is so tangible as well. So tangible and so achievable. So yeah, yep. Really excited.
Very doable. That was the thing when I found podcast player app ads. I'm like, wait a second. This whole time I could have just paid for a simple banner ad and got subscribers instead of racking my brain on social media, trying to do all this dumb stuff to get subscribers. I'm like, I'd much rather just pay and get new subscribers and then just podcast and just keep them happy. So it's very, very nice. All right. We got to do your shout out. So let people know where they can go to connect with you, if they're going to find you on social media or website or both.
Yeah, absolutely. So I keep it nice and simple. My name is Verity Songon and I'm just Verity Songon on everything. So it's Songon. It's like your surname. You don't kind of pronounce it quite how it's written. So Songon is Sangan, but I'm at Verity Songon on Instagram. My website is veritysongon.com. And if you type it into, if you don't remember the Confident CEO podcast, which is probably the easier one to remember than Verity Songon, but I pop up on Apple Podcasts as well, and pretty much any other podcast directory that you can think of as well.
Outstanding. Check out the Confident CEO podcast. All right, Pod Pals, if you would like to come on the show and do a podcast audit just like my Pod Pal Verity here, then just head on over to the website, www.podcastingbusiness.school. Get signed up, get on my calendar, and we will collaborate and create some awesome content, just like me and my pod pal Verity right here today. All right, everybody, I hope that you are also out there growing your show. I hope these tips really delivered for you. I'm going to send you out into the world, wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you next time.